"You deserve a better life," said the rich rancher, as she cleaned his stable on Christmas Eve. The winter had arrived early that year, earlier than anyone in the small rural town had expected. Snow covered the fields, turning everything white and quiet. The trees were heavy with frost, and the wind blew in sharp gusts that made people pull their coats tightly around them. It was Christmas Eve, a time when most families were preparing for celebrations, wrapping gifts, or baking treats for loved ones. But for Clara, the night was no different from any other. She had a job to do, and she had to do it well. She could not afford the luxury of celebration or warmth. Her life had been hard for as long as she could remember, and each day was a struggle to survive. Clara had been orphaned when she was very young. Her parents had died suddenly, leaving her alone in the world. She had lived with distant relatives for a while, but they treated her more as a burden than as family. She learned quickly that she could only rely on herself. By the time she was 16, she had left that home and started working odd jobs in the town. She had done anything that would pay a few coins, washing dishes, mending clothes, and helping at local farms. Life had taught her to be strong, to be careful, and to keep moving forward no matter how difficult things seemed. That winter, she had found work at the Cowboy Ranch, the largest estate in the area. The ranch belonged to Mr. Henry Calloway, a wealthy man known throughout the town for his success in raising horses and managing his vast lands. Though people admired him, most never saw much of him, as he kept to himself and trusted only a few people to help manage the estate. Clara was one of the workers who cared for the horses and cleaned the stables. It was demanding work, and in the bitter cold, it could be almost unbearable. But she was grateful for the income, no matter how small. Every coin she earned was a step toward keeping herself alive and independent. That evening, Clara arrived at the stables just as the first snowflakes began to fall. They were delicate and soft, floating gently to the ground. The sight made her pause for a moment, her breath visible in the cold air. It was a beautiful scene, yet she felt no warmth from it. She had long learned that beauty in the world did not always make life easier. Still, she couldn't help a small smile as she watched the snow settle on the roofs and the fields beyond. It reminded her that, despite the hardships, there were still moments of wonder if one took the time to notice them. She moved quickly, untying the horses from their stalls and brushing their coats to remove the dirt and dust of the day. The animals were calm and patient with her, as if they sensed her kind heart. Clara had always had a way with animals. They seemed to understand her, and she found comfort in their gentle eyes and soft movements. Cleaning the stables was more than a job for her. It was a routine that grounded her, a space where she could feel useful and needed. It was a small peace in an otherwise harsh and unforgiving life. The wind howled outside, rattling the wooden walls of the stable. Clara's fingers were numb even through the thick gloves she wore. Her boots were soaked from the melting snow, and her coat, though warm, could not block the cold completely. She worked tirelessly, scooping out the straw, cleaning the troughs, and making sure the horses had fresh water and food. The effort was exhausting, but she did not complain. She knew that complaining would not change anything. Life had taught her that survival required patience, endurance, and determination. And Clara had these qualities in abundance, even if she did not always recognize them in herself. As she worked, she thought about the town she had left behind that morning. Families were preparing for Christmas dinners, children were excitedly awaiting presents, and laughter filled the air in cozy homes. No, Clara had no family to share this night with, no one to exchange gifts or stories. For years she had spent Christmas alone, focusing on work and survival rather than celebration. Yet, she did not feel bitter. She had learned that happiness did not always come from people or gifts. Sometimes it came from the small things, cleaning a horse, hearing the soft crunch of snow beneath her boots, or seeing a beautiful sunset on a cold winter day. These were her treasures, simple yet deeply meaningful. Around her, the stable smelled of hay, horses, and a faint trace of wood smoke from the nearby fireplace that kept the main house warm. Clara enjoyed the quiet of the place, though the cold sometimes made it hard to concentrate. She hummed a soft tune to herself as she worked, a song her mother had sung long ago. The melody reminded her of a time when life had been easier, before tragedy had taken her family. For a brief moment she allowed herself to feel a little nostalgia, a little warmth in the memory of love she had once known. Then she shook her head and returned to her tasks, determined not to dwell too long on what she could not change. Hours passed slowly. The sky outside darkened and the snow continued to fall in thick, soft flakes. The wind was relentless, and Clara's body ached from the long hours of bending, lifting, and scrubbing. She paused, occasionally to wipe her brow and shake out her stiff limbs. Her breath came in small clouds, and the cold made her cheeks rosy. She could feel the fatigue in every muscle, yet she did not stop. She had promised herself that she would finish her work before anyone else arrived. She took pride in her diligence, knowing that her efforts mattered even if no one noticed. This was her life, and she intended to give it everything she had. Inside the main house, lights glowed warmly through the frosted windows. Clara could see shadows moving as the staff prepared for the evening. They were enjoying their holiday in small ways, chatting quietly and sipping hot drinks. Clara felt a pang of longing but quickly pushed it aside. She did not expect comfort, and she did not expect recognition. Her only expectation was to complete her work and earn her daily wage. And yet, something stirred deep inside her. A faint hope, a quiet curiosity about what might happen that night. She could not know it then, but this Christmas Eve would be unlike any she had ever experienced. Something was about to change in her life, though she could not imagine what. As the evening grew colder, Clara finished tending to the horses. She made sure each one had enough straw to keep warm and that the water troughs were filled and not frozen. The stable was finally clean, and a sense of accomplishment filled her. She paused to look at her reflection in a nearby bucket of water. Her hair was damp from the snow, her cheeks red from the cold, and her eyes tired but bright. She saw a young woman who had endured hardship, who had survived on her own, and who had not given up despite the cruelty of life. That reflection gave her strength. She knew she was capable of more, even if the world had not yet offered her the chance. Clara bundled herself in her coat and gloves, stepping outside to finish her rounds. The snow was falling heavily now, and the ranch looked magical under the thick white blanket. The horses in the pastures stamped their hooves and snorted, sending little clouds of steam into the air. Clara moved from stall to stall, checking fences and gates, ensuring everything was secure. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and her fingers were nearly numb, but she kept going. The cold could not stop her determination, and her heart remained steadfast. She was alone in this vast winter landscape, but she felt alive and purposeful, a small flame of hope in the darkness. As she worked, she thought of the future, though she had little reason to believe it would be bright. Yet a part of her dared to dream. She imagined a life where she did not have to struggle every day, where she could feel safe, where she could find kindness and respect. The thought made her smile faintly even as the wind bit at her cheeks. For years she had dreamed quietly, never daring to speak of it aloud, but in her heart she held on to the idea that life could be better, that she deserved more than endless struggle. She could not know then that her dream was about to be noticed by someone who had the power to make it real. By the time Clara finished her rounds, the night had fallen completely. The snow continued to drift down, softening every sound, creating a quiet, serene atmosphere. The ranch was peaceful, the horses settled, and the stable spotless. Clara stood for a moment in the falling snow, taking in the beauty and silence of the night. Despite the cold and exhaustion, she felt a small sense of pride. She had done her work well. She had survived another day, and she had not given up. That alone was something worth acknowledging. Little did she know that this quiet dedication, unnoticed by most, had already caught the attention of the rancher himself. Inside the warm, glowing main house, Mr. Henry Calloway had been observing her from a distance. He had noticed her diligence, her kindness toward the animals, and her unwavering spirit. He had seen many workers come and go, but there was something different about Clara, something that made him pause and watch, quietly admiring her strength and courage. He understood the hardships of life, and he knew how rare it was to find someone with such resilience and heart. That Christmas Eve, as the snow fell and the world grew quiet, he made a decision, one that would change both their lives forever. Clara was finishing the last few chores in the stable when she noticed the soft glow of lantern light approaching. She looked up and saw Mr. Henry Calloway himself carrying a small oil lamp that cast a warm golden glow over the cold white snow outside. Clara froze for a moment, surprised to see the wealthy rancher in the stable. He rarely left the house, and even less often did he check on the workers. Yet here he was, walking toward her with a gentle expression on his face, not the stern, distant figure she had imagined from the stories of townspeople. "Good evening, Clara," he said quietly, his voice calm and kind. The sound made her heart skip a beat. She wasn't used to being greeted in such a manner, especially by someone of his stature. She nodded politely, unsure of what to say. Henry did not rush past her or ignore her presence. Instead, he paused and looked around the stable, his eyes taking in the clean straw, the well-fed horses, and the neat rows of tools. Then he looked back at her. "I've been watching you work," he said softly. "You have a careful way with the horses, and your attention to detail is impressive. Most people would have rushed through these chores, but not you." Praise from anyone would have made her happy, but from Mr. Calloway, it was extraordinary. She had spent so many years unnoticed, working in silence, that someone acknowledging her efforts felt almost unreal. Henry set the lamp down on a post near the stable door and took a step closer. "Clara," he continued, "I know life has not been easy for you. I can see it in the way you carry yourself, in your hands and in your eyes. You have endured hardships that would make many people give up, but you haven't. And that is something special. You deserve a better life than this." Clara blinked, unsure of how to respond. She had heard words like deserve and better life before, but only from people in passing who did not really mean them. To hear them now from a man she barely knew made her stomach twist with a mix of disbelief and hope. She wanted to speak, to say something, but her voice caught in her throat. She had been trained by years of survival to be cautious with strangers, even those who seemed kind. Yet there was something in Henry's calm, sincere gaze that made her pause and listen. Henry smiled gently. "I don't often leave the house to visit the stables, but tonight I wanted to see for myself. And I wanted to bring you something." He lifted a small basket filled with bread, fresh fruit, and a few sweet treats. "It's not much," he said, "but I thought you might like a little comfort on this cold evening." Clara took the basket with trembling hands, feeling the warmth of the food and the kindness behind the gesture. She was so touched that her eyes misted with tears, which she quickly brushed away. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but Henry heard it. He nodded and continued. "Clara, I want to offer you more than just temporary work. I want you to have an opportunity, a chance to improve your life, to feel valued, and to know your worth. You have shown me that you are hardworking, honest, and capable. These are qualities that are rare, and they deserve to be recognized." She had spent so many years struggling, always taking one day at a time, never daring to dream of anything more. She had thought that survival was all she could hope for, but now standing in the stable with the snow falling outside and Henry speaking to her with such sincerity, she realized that maybe, just maybe, life could offer her something better. Henry waited patiently, as if giving her the time to absorb his words. Clara's mind raced. Could she trust him? Was this real, or was it just a kind gesture that would fade away in the morning? She had learned the hard way that life could be unpredictable and that promises were often empty. Yet there was something different about him. She could feel the honesty in his voice, the respect in his eyes, and the genuine concern in his demeanor. Finally, she found her voice. I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. "I've never had anyone notice me like this before." Henry's smile deepened. "Then say nothing for now," he replied. "Just know that I mean every word. You are capable of more than you realize. And tonight, I want to help you see that for yourself." He stepped closer and placed a hand gently on her shoulder, not in a way that was intrusive, but in a way that conveyed support and reassurance. Clara felt a warmth spread through her, one that had nothing to do with the cold lantern light or the cozy glow of the barn. It was the warmth of being seen, of being valued, of being recognized as someone worthy of care and opportunity. Henry then explained what he had in mind. He wanted to offer her a position in the main house, where she could learn valuable skills, household management, bookkeeping, and more. But it wasn't just about the work. He wanted to ensure she had stability and respect, something she had rarely experienced in her life. Clara listened intently, her heart beating fast. She had never imagined such a chance, never even dared to dream it. And yet, here it was, offered to her freely, without strings or demands. I don't know if I can do it," Clara said quietly, fear mixed with hope in her words. She had spent so many years surviving on her own that the thought of trusting someone, even a kind person like Henry, was frightening. She worried about failing, about disappointing him, about being sent away and losing the small security she had. But at the same time, a small spark of courage flickered inside her. Perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for all her life. Henry nodded, understanding her hesitation. "It's natural to feel that way," he said kindly. "But you have already proven that you are capable. I will guide you, and you will have support. You don't have to face this alone." His words reassured her. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of safety and guidance, not just survival. It was a strange, wonderful feeling, one that made her eyes shine and her heart swell with gratitude. They stood in the quiet stable, the snow falling softly outside, and Clara realized that something had shifted. Life, which had always felt so harsh and unyielding, suddenly seemed full of possibility. She could almost see a future where she was respected, valued, and supported. a future where she could dream and grow without fear. It was a thought she had not dared to entertain for many years, yet now it seemed real, tangible, and within reach. Henry looked around once more at the stable and then back at Clara. "Tonight is special," he said softly. "It's Christmas Eve, a time when we are reminded to be kind, to give, and to hope. I want this to be your turning point. Take this chance and let yourself believe that good things can happen." Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes again, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming kindness and hope she felt. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment, letting the moment sink in. Finally, she whispered, I will try. I will do my best." Henry smiled warmly. "That is all I ask," he said. "All I ask is that you believe in yourself, as I already believe in you." The words stayed with her long after he left the stable. She finished her rounds, carrying the basket of food back to the small room where she slept. For the first time in a long while, she felt excitement about the future, a sense of hope that had been missing from her life. That night, as Clara lay down under the thin blankets in her modest quarters, she thought about the kind gesture of the rancher. She thought about the possibility of change, of a life where she was valued and given opportunities. The snow continued to fall outside, quiet and steady, covering the world in white. And inside Clara, a quiet warmth began to grow, a warmth of hope, of possibility, and of the belief that perhaps, just perhaps, life had more to offer than hardship and struggle. As she drifted off to sleep, she did not dream of presents or festive dinners. Instead, she dreamed of a new beginning, one where she could rise above her struggles and build a life of respect, dignity, and hope. Little did she know, this Christmas Eve would mark the first step in a journey that would transform her life completely. The next morning, Clara woke earlier than usual. Her small room, modest as it was, felt warmer somehow, not because of the thin stove that barely kept the chill away, but because of the hope that had taken root in her heart the night before. She had made a promise to herself to take this chance, to try and to step into a life she had never imagined. Yet the thought of stepping into the main house, walking among people she barely knew, and learning skills she had never practiced made her nervous. What if she failed? What if she disappointed Mr. Calloway? What if she had hoped for something that was never truly meant to be hers? Still, she pushed aside her fears and dressed quickly in her work clothes, smoothing her hair as best as she could. She carried the basket Henry had left her down to the kitchen where a few of the ranch staff were preparing breakfast. The scent of fresh bread, eggs, and coffee filled the room, and Clara felt a pang of longing. She had eaten cold meals by herself for so long that the simple aroma of a warm, busy kitchen felt luxurious. She placed the basket down quietly, and the cook smiled at her, noticing the glow on her face. "Good morning, Clara," said Mrs. Foster, the head housekeeper, a kind woman who had worked at the ranch for many years. "You look different today." More confident somehow. Clara blushed and nodded politely. "Thank you, ma'am," she said softly. She did not yet have the words to explain the changes in her heart, the excitement and nervousness all tangled together inside her. When Henry appeared in the kitchen later that morning, Clara felt her heart jump. He had a calm, friendly smile, and he greeted her with a nod that carried warmth and encouragement. "Are you ready?" he asked. Clara swallowed, straightened her back, and nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. I'm ready to try." Henry's eyes softened. "That's all I ask," he said, and motioned for her to follow him to the main house. The main house was grand, far larger than anything Clara had ever seen. Its walls gleamed with polished wood, and the floors shone as if they had been buffed daily. Portraits of the Calloway family hung on the walls, and soft carpets lined the hallways. Clara's eyes widened in awe, but she kept her head low and followed Henry, trying to match his calm demeanor. Every step she took felt surreal. For a young woman who had spent most of her life struggling just to survive, this was a world she had never thought she would enter. Henry led her to a quiet room filled with books, papers, and small tools. "This will be your space for learning," he explained. "You will start with some basic household management, keeping track of supplies, managing the pantry, and helping with the smaller administrative tasks. Over time, you will learn more, and eventually, you will be able to take on more responsibilities." Clara listened intently, nodding as he spoke. The words were simple, but they carried a promise of growth, stability, and opportunity. She felt a surge of determination. She would not waste this chance. Over the following days, Clara began her lessons. Mrs. Foster guided her patiently, showing her how to organize supplies, take inventory, and manage the kitchen efficiently. She taught Clara how to make lists, track expenses, and ensure that everything in the house ran smoothly. It was challenging work, There were so many details to remember, so many small mistakes that could cause problems. Clara stumbled at first, misplacing a few items or forgetting a step, but Henry always encouraged her gently, reminding her that mistakes were part of learning. "Clara," he said one afternoon as they sorted through a set of ledgers, "you are doing better than you realize. It takes time to learn, but you have the patience and intelligence to handle it. Don't be too hard on yourself." Clara looked up at him, feeling a rush of gratitude. She had never had anyone speak to her like that before. Most people only saw what she could do immediately, not what she was capable of becoming. Henry's faith in her made her want to push herself harder, to rise to the expectations he had quietly set. As the weeks passed, Clara's confidence grew. She began to understand the rhythm of the household, how to anticipate needs before they were spoken, and how to keep everything organized. She discovered talents she had never known she possessed: a knack for planning, a sharp memory for details, and a gentle, calm presence that made others feel comfortable around her. Even the ranch hands, who had initially regarded her as just another worker, began to treat her with respect. They noticed her diligence and her growing skill, and some even sought her advice when they faced small problems in their own tasks. One chilly morning, as snow drifted outside the large windows of the main house, Henry walked into Clara's room with a warm cup of cocoa. "You've done well," he said simply. Clara accepted the cup with a smile. The small gesture, though ordinary, carried a weight of encouragement that touched her deeply. It was not just about the cocoa. It was about recognition, kindness, and support. She realized how much such small gestures could impact someone who had lived so long without them. Despite her growing confidence, Clara sometimes felt waves of doubt. She worried that she might not belong in this new world, that her past struggles would define her, and that she would eventually be sent back to the cold, lonely life she had known. But Henry's constant guidance helped her navigate these fears. He treated her not as an employee who needed to be managed, but as a young woman with potential who deserved a chance to grow. That belief became a steady light in her heart, something she could hold on to when self-doubt threatened to overwhelm her. One day, as Clara was organizing the pantry, she found a small note tucked behind a jar of preserves. It read, "Keep going. You are capable of more than you know." It was written in Henry's handwriting, and it made her laugh softly. She realized that he had been watching her quietly, encouraging her in ways that were subtle but powerful. The note reminded her that progress was not always about grand gestures. It was about patience, support, and belief. Clara pinned it to the wall near her workspace, where she could see it every day. It became a small symbol of hope and perseverance, a reminder that she was on the right path. As Christmas approached, Clara began to feel a sense of belonging that she had never known before. The main house was alive with preparations for the holiday. Decorations were being hung, candles lit, and the scent of baked goods filled the air. For the first time in her life, Clara was not on the outside looking in. She was part of something larger, a community, a household, a family of sorts. She helped with the preparations, learning new skills along the way, and found herself smiling more often than she had in years. One evening, as she finished decorating a small corner of the dining room, Henry entered quietly. "It looks wonderful," he said, his voice warm. Clara felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, sir," she replied softly. He nodded and stood beside her for a moment, looking at the room together. "Clara," he said, "you have changed more than just this house. You have changed yourself. You are stronger, more confident, and capable of so much more than you realize. This is only the beginning." Clara realized that her journey was not just about learning skills or earning a living. It was about discovering her own worth, building her confidence, and realizing that she could shape her future. She understood that life had given her an opportunity to rise above her past, and she was determined to make the most of it. By Christmas Eve, Clara had fully embraced her new role. She moved through the house with confidence, assisting where needed, offering suggestions, and lending a helping hand to the staff. The warmth of the household, the laughter, and the shared sense of purpose filled her heart with a joy she had never known. She had not just found a job, she had found a place where she belonged, where her efforts mattered, and where she was respected for who she was. As the evening fell and snow began to blanket the ranch once more, Clara paused near the window, looking out at the winter landscape. She thought about how far she had come, from the lonely, cold stables to this warm, bustling home filled with light and life. She thought about the kindness of Henry, the guidance of Mrs. Foster, and the quiet support of the staff. For the first time in her life, she felt a deep sense of hope and possibility. Clara knew that her life had changed forever, and that it would continue to change as long as she kept learning, growing, and believing in herself. She realized that the opportunity she had been given was more than just a chance to work. It was a chance to discover her potential, to build a life of respect and dignity, and to experience the simple joy of being valued. She felt gratitude, determination, and a quiet excitement for the days to come. That night, as Clara prepared for bed, she thought about Henry's words and the journey that lay ahead. She understood that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter filled with learning, growth, and hope. And for the first time in many years, she went to sleep feeling truly happy, truly safe, and truly ready to embrace the life she had always dreamed of. The weeks that followed Clara's first Christmas Eve at the Calloway Ranch passed quickly, though each day brought new lessons and challenges. Clara had begun to feel more at home in the main house, yet there was still so much to learn. Every morning she rose early to help prepare breakfast, organize supplies, and assist the staff with their chores. Every afternoon she worked alongside Mrs. Foster, learning about household management, bookkeeping, and even helping with small projects around the estate. At first the work seemed overwhelming, but Clara had discovered a strength within herself she had never known. She found that she could absorb instructions quickly, adapt to new tasks, and handle responsibilities that would have once terrified her. Henry continued to observe her quietly, offering guidance when needed, but mostly giving her space to grow. He encouraged her to ask questions, to think creatively, and to solve problems on her own. His faith in her abilities gave her confidence, even when she doubted herself. Clara began to notice subtle changes in the way the staff treated her as well. They no longer saw her merely as a worker. They sought her advice, respected her opinion, and even included her in small conversations during breaks. It was a new experience for her, to be valued not just for the work she did, but for who she was as a person. One cold winter morning, as snow blanketed the fields outside, Clara was assigned to help prepare the guest rooms for visitors who would arrive in a few days. She carefully folded linens, polished furniture, and arranged small decorations to make each room feel welcoming. It was meticulous work, requiring patience and attention to detail. She had never considered herself someone meticulous, yet she found a strange satisfaction in it. Each fold of a sheet, each polished knob, and each neatly arranged vase made her feel proud. It was as if her efforts were leaving a mark, a sign that she belonged, that she could make a difference. Henry entered the room quietly, carrying a cup of warm tea. "You are doing very well, Clara," he said, his voice calm and encouraging. "The guests will be impressed with your work, and so will everyone here. But more importantly, you are learning skills that will serve you for a lifetime. Remember, knowledge is something no one can take from you." Clara accepted the cup with a grateful smile. She felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. His words reminded her that she was not just performing tasks, she was building a foundation for her future. Days turned into weeks, and Clara's confidence continued to grow. She began to notice her own transformation. She stood taller, spoke more clearly, and approached tasks with a sense of purpose. Her movements were no longer hesitant or uncertain. She acted with quiet assurance, a reflection of the skills she had acquired and the faith that Henry had placed in her. Even the horses seemed to respond to the change in her demeanor. They greeted her with gentle nudges and soft neighs, as if they too recognized her newfound confidence. One afternoon, Clara was walking through the stables when she overheard two ranch hands talking. "She's changed a lot since she started working here," one of them said. "She's not just learning the tasks, she's becoming someone you can rely on. It's impressive." The other nodded in agreement. "I've never seen her hesitate. She knows what to do, and she does it well. Henry must see it too. That woman has potential." Clara paused, a small smile forming on her lips. She felt proud, not because of their praise, but because she could see the changes in herself. She had grown stronger, more capable, and more confident, all because she had taken the chance to learn and trust in herself. As Christmas approached again, the household became busy with preparations for the holiday celebrations. Clara found herself helping in ways she had never imagined. She assisted with cooking, helped organize the dining hall, and even helped coordinate small events for the staff and their families. It was exhausting work, but Clara felt a sense of joy that she had never known. She was part of something larger, a community where her contributions mattered, and with each task completed, she felt a growing sense of pride and belonging. Henry continued to support her quietly. He would check in occasionally, offering advice or encouragement, but mostly he let her take the lead. One evening, as they walked through the snow-covered grounds together, Henry spoke softly. "Clara, you've accomplished so much in a short time. But the most important thing you've gained is not just skills or knowledge. You've gained confidence in yourself. That is something no one can give you. It comes from within, and you've earned it." Clara felt a lump in her throat. His words touched her deeply. For so long she had doubted herself, believed she was unworthy or incapable, but now she could feel her own strength, her own courage, and her own ability to shape her future. The holiday season brought a sense of warmth and togetherness to the ranch. Clara noticed how the staff worked seamlessly, supporting each other and sharing small acts of kindness. She realized that Henry had created more than just a well-run household. He had fostered a community where people were valued, respected, and encouraged to grow. Being part of that community changed Clara profoundly. She began to see the importance of kindness, patience, and empathy, not just in herself but in others. She learned that true leadership was not about authority, but about inspiring others to be their best. One chilly evening, Clara was asked to help with a special project. Henry wanted to decorate the main hall for a small Christmas gathering, and he had entrusted Clara with leading the effort. She took the task seriously, carefully arranging garlands, hanging ornaments, and setting up a small Christmas tree. The work required creativity and attention to detail, and Clara felt a sense of excitement and responsibility. She wanted everything to be perfect, not just for the guests, but for herself. This was a chance to show how far she had come, how much she had learned, and how capable she had become. As she worked, Henry joined her, quietly observing her efforts. "You have an eye for this," he said gently. "The decorations look wonderful, but more than that, I can see how much care you are putting into everything. That is what makes a difference." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that his guidance had taught her more than just practical skills. It had taught her how to take pride in her work, how to value herself, and how to approach life with dedication and integrity. The day of the Christmas gathering arrived, and Clara's efforts were noticed by everyone. The main hall looked beautiful, filled with light, warmth, and festive decorations. Guests complimented her on the arrangements, praising her creativity and attention to detail. Clara felt a sense of accomplishment and joy she had never known. She had not only learned new skills, but she had also discovered her own potential and worth. The recognition, though small, meant more to her than any material reward. It was a confirmation that she was capable, valuable, and deserving of respect. That evening, after the guests had gone, Henry found Clara in the main hall. "You did an excellent job today," he said warmly. "Not just with the decorations, but with everything you've done over the past weeks. You've grown so much, and I am proud of you." Clara felt a wave of gratitude and humility. She realized that her journey was far from over, but she had already achieved so much. She had gained confidence, skills, and a sense of belonging. Most importantly, she had learned to believe in herself. As the night settled over the ranch, Clara looked out at the snow-covered fields, thinking about how far she had come. She remembered the lonely, cold nights in the stable, the years of struggle and hardship, and the uncertainty of her future. And now she saw a path forward, a path filled with opportunity, growth, and hope. She understood that life had given her a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. In the quiet moments before bed, Clara reflected on the lessons she had learned. She had discovered that resilience, determination, and a willingness to learn could open doors she had never imagined. She had realized the power of kindness, both given and received, and how it could transform lives. She had seen firsthand how belief in oneself, combined with support from others, could create extraordinary change, and she had begun to understand that her life was no longer defined by hardship, but by the possibilities she could create for herself. As she lay down that night, wrapped in a warm blanket, Clara felt a sense of peace and hope. She knew that challenges would continue to come, but she also knew that she had the strength, skills, and courage to face them. The snow continued to fall softly outside, covering the world in white, quiet beauty. Inside Clara, a light had been lit, a light of confidence, possibility, and belief in a better future. She drifted off to sleep, ready to embrace whatever the next day would bring, knowing that her life had changed forever. The morning of Christmas Eve arrived at the Cowboy ranch, bright and sparkling. The snow from the night before had covered the grounds with a thick, soft layer, making the world outside look like a scene from a storybook. Clara woke earlier than usual, her heart filled with excitement and gratitude. She had grown so much over the past weeks. The timid, uncertain girl who had once cleaned stables alone in the cold was now confident, capable, and valued. Today felt different. Today felt like a true beginning, a moment when all the lessons, all the hard work, and all the kindness she had received would come together in a celebration of life, hope, and possibility. She dressed carefully in warm clothing, pulling on her gloves and scarf as she stepped outside. The crisp air filled her lungs and the snow crunched softly beneath her boots. Clara walked to the main house carrying a basket of freshly baked goods she had prepared with the help of Mrs. Foster. The kitchen was alive with activity, staff moving around to finish preparations for the Christmas gathering. Clara felt a sense of pride as she helped arrange the food, set the tables, and make sure everything was perfect. Her hands moved with purpose and confidence, each action reflecting the skills she had learned and the growth she had experienced. Henry appeared in the kitchen quietly, carrying a cup of warm coffee. He watched Clara for a moment, a gentle smile on his face. "You have done an incredible job," he said softly. Clara looked up, her cheeks warming at the praise. "Thank you, sir," she replied humbly. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Henry shook his head. "No, Clara, you could have done this on your own. I only helped you see what was already inside you. That is the remarkable thing." The staff smiled as they watched the exchange. They had seen Clara transform over the weeks, and they knew this day was as much about her personal growth as it was about Christmas celebrations. The kitchen was filled with warmth, laughter, and the delightful aroma of baked treats. Clara felt a sense of belonging that she had never known. She realized that the support, encouragement, and kindness she had received had changed her life, not through magic or fortune, but through patience, belief, and opportunity. As the guests began to arrive in the main hall, Clara moved among them with confidence. She welcomed each person warmly, helped guide them to the appropriate rooms, and assisted with the presentation of food and decorations. Her movements were smooth, her voice steady, and her demeanor calm. For the first time, she felt fully capable of taking on responsibility and shining in a world that had once felt intimidating and distant. People noticed her competence and grace, and many complimented her directly on the beautiful arrangements and thoughtful preparation. Clara smiled quietly, feeling joy swell within her chest. Henry observed from a distance, proud of how far Clara had come. He remembered the first Christmas Eve he had found her in the cold stables, working tirelessly despite the snow and biting wind. Back then she had been shy, hesitant, and uncertain of her worth. Today she moved confidently through the house, helping guests, coordinating tasks, and offering guidance where needed. She had changed not because he had forced her, but because he had believed in her and given her a chance to discover her own strength. Throughout the day, Clara received small gestures of gratitude and recognition from the staff and guests alike. A kind word here, a compliment there, a nod of respect from someone who had once overlooked her. They all added to the warmth she felt inside. It was a feeling she had longed for her entire life, the feeling of being valued, appreciated, and truly seen. She realized that this was the gift she had received, the gift of dignity, confidence, and hope. As evening approached, the gathering became more intimate. The guests sat together by the large fireplace, sharing stories, laughter, and music. Clara quietly took a seat nearby, observing the joy and connection all around her. For years she had watched such moments from the outside, feeling isolated and unworthy. Now she was part of it, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged. She felt a quiet happiness knowing that she had earned her place and that her contributions mattered. Henry approached her quietly, carrying a small wrapped package. He handed it to Clara with a warm smile. "This is for you," he said softly. Clara took the gift with trembling hands, curious and a little nervous. She unwrapped it carefully and found a simple, beautiful journal inside. The cover was smooth, the pages blank, waiting for someone to fill them with words, thoughts, and dreams. Clara looked up at Henry, surprised. "A journal?" she asked softly. "Yes," he replied. "It is for you to write your story, to capture your dreams, your goals, and the lessons you learn along the way. You have come so far, Clara, but this is only the beginning. The rest of your story is yours to create." Tears filled Clara's eyes as she held the journal close. She had never received a gift like this, not one that encouraged her growth, recognized her potential, and invited her to dream. She felt gratitude, joy, and a sense of possibility that was almost overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. I will fill it with everything I learn, everything I hope for." Henry nodded, his eyes kind and encouraging. "I have no doubt that you will," he said. Later that evening, Clara found herself standing near the large window in the main hall, looking out at the snow-covered ranch. The lights of the house reflected off the snow, creating a magical scene. She thought back to the lonely nights she had spent in the stables, the years of struggle, and the uncertainty of her past. And now she saw how much her life had changed. She had grown stronger, more confident, and more capable. She had found a place where she belonged, where she was valued, and where she could build a future. As she reflected, she realized that Henry's kindness had done more than offer her opportunity. It had shown her the importance of believing in oneself, of embracing challenges, and of pursuing growth with determination, and of pursuing growth. She understood that the life she had once imagined as impossible was now within reach. The lessons she had learned, patience, diligence, compassion, and resilience, were not just skills for managing a household. They were tools for life. She felt empowered, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. The evening drew to a close, and the guests departed, one by one. The house was quiet again, the warmth of the fire and the soft glow of lanterns filling the space. Clara moved through the rooms, tidying and reflecting on the day. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not just because of the successful gathering, but because of how far she had come. It transformed from a young woman uncertain of her worth into someone confident, capable, and hopeful. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worthwhile. Henry found her once more, standing near the fireplace, and spoke softly. "Clara, you have done more than I could have imagined. You have grown in ways that will serve you for the rest of your life. Remember, this is your journey. Keep believing in yourself, keep learning, and keep moving forward. You deserve every bit of happiness and success that comes your way." Clara felt tears welling up again, but this time they were tears of joy. She nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. Before retiring for the night, Clara sat by the fire, opened her new journal, and began to write. She wrote about the cold nights in the stables, the loneliness she had felt, the lessons she had learned, and the hope that now filled her heart. She wrote about Henry's kindness, the faith he had placed in her, and the transformation that had taken place within her. And as she wrote, she realized that her story was no longer just about survival. It was about growth, possibility, and the power of believing in oneself. As sleep finally claimed her, Clara felt a peace she had never known. The snow fell gently outside, covering the ranch in quiet beauty, and the warmth of the house and the people within it wrapped around her like a protective blanket. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength, courage, and determination to face them. She understood that her journey had just begun, and that the lessons she had learned would guide her through the days ahead. Clara's first Christmas in the main house ended not with gifts or grand celebrations, but with a quiet, profound sense of fulfillment. She had discovered her own worth, built her confidence, and found a place where she truly belonged. And in that realization, she understood the greatest gift of all, the gift of hope, opportunity, and the belief that she deserved a better life. From that night forward, Clara embraced her journey with courage and gratitude, knowing that she had the power to shape her own future and create a life full of joy, purpose, and meaning. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in white, but inside Clara a bright light burned, a light of hope, confidence, and new beginnings. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt that life was hers to shape, hers to live, and hers to cherish.